The purple mist floated through the air vents of the research ship, bringing death with every breath. Nira pressed her hand against the cool metal wall as another wave of pain shot through her chest. Around her, the bodies of her crew lay scattered. Across the laboratory floor, their green skin now turned a sickly yellow color. She had watched them die one by one over the past 3 days. First came the fever, then the coughing, and finally the slow shutdown of their organs. The Ravak had done this to them. Those monsters in their black ships had boarded their peaceful vessel, injected everyone with some kind of poison, then left them to suffer while recording everything. Nira crawled toward the communication console, leaving a trail of dark blood behind her. Her people, the Ashanti, had never hurt anyone. They studied plants and flowers from different worlds, trying to help other species grow food and medicine. They carried no weapons, fought no wars, and asked for nothing but the chance to learn and share knowledge. The Ravak did not care about any of that. She remembered their leader, a tall creature with silver skin and dead black eyes. It had spoken to her through a translation device, its voice cold and empty. "Your species serves no purpose in our new galaxy," it had said. "We will study how quickly you die, then use this information on others like you." The communication panel flickered as she reached it. Her fingers, now swollen and painful, struggled to work the controls. She had to warn someone. She had to tell the galaxy what the Ravak were doing before more innocent people died. Vale, her communications officer, lay nearby. She had died just hours ago, but not before helping Nira prepare this message. Together, they had gathered all the evidence they could find. Pictures of destroyed worlds, records of extinct species, and proof of the Ravak's terrible plan. The Ravak Dominion had been moving across the galaxy for hundreds of years, destroying every species they found. They called it cleansing, but it was just murder. They would arrive at a peaceful world, test new weapons on the people there, then move on to find their next victims. Entire civilizations had vanished without anyone knowing what happened to them. Nira activated the emergency broadcast system. Her message would go out in all directions, hoping to reach anyone who might listen. Most species in the galaxy were too afraid to fight back against the Ravak. They would hide or run away, just as her people should have done. But maybe someone out there was different. Maybe someone would care enough to do something about it. She began recording her message, speaking in the common trade language that most species understood. "This is research vessel, luminous dawn of the Ashanti people. We are dying. The Ravak Dominion has infected us with a biological weapon as part of their genocide program." Her voice grew weaker with each word, but she forced herself to continue. "We are sending you all the evidence we have collected. The Ravak have destroyed over 400 species. They are moving toward the outer edge of the galaxy where the newer civilizations live. They will not stop until everyone is dead." She uploaded the data files that Vale had prepared. Star charts showing the locations of dead worlds, pictures of Ravak ships and weapons, records of their conversations with the silver-skinned monsters who had done this to her people. "We do not expect anyone to save us," she continued. "We are already lost. But if there are warriors somewhere in this galaxy, if there are people who still believe in protecting the innocent, please remember us. Please stop them before they kill everyone else." The pain in her chest grew worse, making it hard to breathe. She could feel her life slipping away, just as it had with all her friends and crew members. But she had one more thing to say. "Theorao, Ashanti people never harmed anyone. We grew flowers and shared food with those who needed it. We wanted to make the galaxy a better place for everyone. The Ravak killed us because we were different from them. They killed us because we chose to help instead of hurt." Her vision began to blur, but she kept talking. "If you receive this message, know that we died hoping someone would care. We died believing that somewhere in the darkness there might be someone willing to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves." The message system showed that her broadcast was spreading outward at light speed, carrying her words and data to every corner of nearby space. It would take weeks or months to reach the nearest civilizations, but at least she had tried. Nira collapsed next to the console, her breathing shallow and painful. Through the ship's windows, she could see the stars shining in the distance. Somewhere, out there, the Ravak were probably attacking another peaceful world, spreading their poison and recording the results. She thought about her garden back home, where she had grown the most beautiful flowers in her sector. She thought about the children who would visit her laboratory, eager to learn about plants and growing things. All of that was gone now, destroyed by creatures who saw no value in life or beauty or hope. Her fingers found the emergency beacon, switch. With her last bit of strength, she activated it, adding the ship's location to her message. Maybe someone would come to investigate. Maybe they would find the evidence and understand what the Ravak were really doing. As darkness closed, in around her, Nira whispered one final prayer. Let someone hear us, let someone care enough to stop this madness. The message raced through space, carrying with it the final testimony of the Ashanti people. It passed through empty systems and around dead stars, searching for anyone who might listen. Deep space monitoring stations picked up the signal and recorded it, but most ignored it as just another piece of cosmic noise. But on a small moon orbiting the third planet of a yellow star, something different happened. A human scientist named Emma Rodriguez was working the late shift at Luna Station when the signal reached Earth space. She almost deleted it along with the other random transmissions, but something made her pause. The signal was too organized, too structured to be natural. She ran it through the translation programs and watched in growing horror as the message revealed its secrets. This was not cosmic noise. This was a cry for help from across the galaxy. Emma stared at the data streaming across her screen. Pictures of destroyed worlds, records of mass murder, and the desperate final words of a dying species. She had never heard of the Ashanti or the Ravak, but the evidence was clear. Somewhere out there, monsters were killing innocent people for no reason other than hatred. She reached for her communication device with shaking hands. This was bigger than anything humanity had ever encountered. This would change everything. The emergency meeting room beneath the Swiss mountains had never seen so many world leaders gathered at once. Emma Rodriguez sat at a table surrounded by presidents, prime ministers, and military commanders from every nation on Earth. Her hands still shook as she explained what she had discovered in that alien signal. The translation is complete, she said, activating the holographic display. What you are about to see will disturb you, but you need to understand what we are dealing with. The room fell silent as images filled the air above the table. Burning cities on worlds they had never seen, bodies scattered across alien landscapes, ships firing weapons that turned entire populations to ash in seconds. The evidence of the Ravak Dominion's crimes stretched back for centuries. Admiral Blake, the head of Earth Space Forces, leaned forward in his chair. How many species have they destroyed? Over 400 confirmed, Emma replied. But the Ashanti data suggests the real number could be much higher. The Ravak have been doing this for a very long time. President Chen, representing the United Earth government, studied the star charts showing the path of Ravak expansion. Where are they now? Moving in our direction, Emma answered. Based on their historical pattern, they advance roughly 50 light-years every 10 years. At that rate, they will reach human space within the next century. The room erupted in worried conversations. General Torres, commander of the Mars Defense Forces, stood up and pointed at the display. These Ravak seem to target peaceful species. What makes them think they can do the same to us? Emma pulled up more data from the Ashanti files. Every species they have encountered has been either pacifist or technologically inferior. The Ashanti were plant researchers. The Velian were artists and musicians. The Corlin were philosophers who had given up warfare centuries ago. None of them fought back effectively. But we are not like them, Admiral Blake said quietly. No, Emma agreed. We are not. Dr. Miles, Earth's top xenobiology expert, had been studying the Ravak tactical information. Their strategies are designed for hunting defenseless prey. They rely on fear, biological weapons, and overwhelming technological superiority against civilizations that cannot or will not fight back. President Chen activated her communication device. I am calling an emergency session of the Global Assembly, Every nation needs to hear this information. Within hours, the message had spread across human space. From the underground cities of Luna to the farming colonies of Alpha Centauri, humanity learned about the monsters heading toward them. The reaction was unlike anything in human history. Mars, factory workers abandoned their shifts to volunteer for military service. In the asteroid belt, miners began converting their equipment into weapons. Even the usually peaceful research stations started developing new technologies for warfare. The global assembly session was broadcast live to every human settlement in the solar system. President Chen stood before representatives from 200 nations and colonies, her voice carrying across billions of miles of space. "Fellow humans," she began, "we have learned that we are not alone in the universe. We have also learned that we are in terrible danger." She showed them the evidence from the Ashanti signal, the images of genocide, the records of systematic murder, and the cold calculations of creatures who saw other life forms as nothing more than test subjects for their weapons. The Ravak Dominion has spent centuries destroying peaceful civilizations. They are moving toward our region of space, and they will not stop to ask if we surrender. They will simply kill us all and record the results for their research. The assembly hall fell completely quiet. Representatives who had spent years arguing about trade disputes and territorial boundaries suddenly realized how small those problems really were. "But we have something the other species did not," President Chen continued. "We have the knowledge that they are coming. We have time to prepare. And we have something else that the Ravak have never encountered before." She paused, looking directly into the cameras that carried her words across human space. "We have the will to fight back." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every major corporation pledged their resources to the war effort. Yamato Industries offered to convert their entire manufacturing capacity to military production. The African Mining Consortium promised unlimited access to rare metals needed for advanced weapons. Even the normally neutral Swiss Confederation opened their secret research facilities to the military. Colony governors called emergency sessions of their local assemblies. The outer settlements, which had always been the most independent-minded, suddenly realized they were also the most vulnerable to attack. They began coordinating their defenses and sharing resources in ways that had seemed impossible just days before. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Advanced Weapons Research Division, found herself in charge of the largest military development project in human history. "We need to assume that their technology is superior to ours," she told her assembled teams. "But we also need to remember that they have never faced serious resistance. Their weapons and tactics are designed for massacring helpless civilians, not fighting a real war." The Ashanti data provided crucial intelligence about Ravak capabilities. Their ships used energy shields that could deflect most conventional weapons. Their biological weapons were designed to target specific genetic markers. Their tactics relied on psychological warfare and the gradual breakdown of enemy morale. "But they have weaknesses," Dr. Kim explained to her researchers. "Their shields have gaps in certain frequency ranges. Their biological weapons require detailed genetic information that they do not have about humanity. And their psychological tactics assume they are fighting people who have something to lose." Engineer Paul developed the first prototypes of human anti-Ravak weapons within a month. "We are not trying to match their technology," he explained to the testing teams. "We are trying to exploit their assumptions. They expect us to be like all the other species they have destroyed. They expect us to be afraid." The military buildup exceeded all projections. Colonel Wright's recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. "I have never seen anything like this," she reported to Admiral Blake. "People are coming from every walk of life. Teachers, farmers, artists, scientists. They all want to join the fight." The space shipyards that had once built cargo vessels and research ships began producing warships at an incredible pace. The designs were unlike anything humanity had ever built before. These ships were not meant for exploration or trade. They were built for one purpose only: to destroy the enemies of innocent life. Ambassador Harris led diplomatic efforts to contact other species in the galaxy. Using the communication frequencies found in the Ashanti data, human messages began reaching civilizations that had been hiding from the Ravak for generations. The responses were mixed. Some species were too afraid to help, still traumatized by their encounters with the Dominion. Others offered what support they could, sharing intelligence and resources with their new human allies. A few brave civilizations even volunteered to join the fight directly. "They are amazed that we are willing to do this," Ambassador Harris reported. "Most of them have been running and hiding for so long that they had forgotten anyone might actually fight back." As the months passed, human space transformed into something unprecedented. Every world, every station, every settlement became part of a vast war machine dedicated to a single goal. The Ravak Dominion had spent centuries believing that genocide was easy, that peaceful species would always submit to their superior power. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The final piece of the plan came from an unexpected source. Dr. Lisa, a young physicist working on faster-than-light communication, made a breakthrough that would change everything. "We can do more than just defend ourselves," she announced at a meeting of the military leadership. "We can take the fight to them. We can make them pay for every life they have taken." Admiral Blake looked at the data she presented. "Are you saying what I think you are saying?" "Yes," Dr. Lisa replied. "We are going to war." 6 months after Emma Rodriguez first detected the Ashanti signal, human space had become unrecognizable. Every asteroid mining station now doubled as a weapons factory. Every research facility worked on military projects. Every transport ship carried supplies for the largest war effort in human history. General Torres walked through the main assembly bay of the new Titan shipyards, watching workers put the finishing touches on humanity's answer to the Ravak threat. The massive warship stretched for almost 2 kilometers, its hull painted black with silver markings. Unlike the sleek, elegant vessels that humans usually built, this ship looked exactly like what it was, a weapon designed to kill. "The Retribution is ready for final testing," reported Chief Engineer Kate as she approached the general. Her hands were covered in grease and her uniform hadn't been changed in days, but her eyes burned with the same fierce determination that had spread across all of humanity. "How many ships are we launching in the first wave?" Torres asked. 300 heavy cruisers, 800 destroyers, and over 2,000 support vessels," Kate replied. "Every one of them carries weapons specifically designed to counter Ravak technology." The human fleet represented completely new thinking about space warfare. Previous human military vessels had been built for defense, patrol duties, and occasional conflicts with pirates or rebels. These new ships were built for one purpose: to hunt down and destroy an enemy that had grown comfortable with murdering defenseless civilians. Dr. Miles had spent months analyzing every piece of Ravak technology found in the Ashanti data. "Their shields operate on specific energy frequencies," he explained to the weapons development teams. "They have never needed to adapt because no one has ever fought back effectively. Our new plasma weapons use frequencies that their shields cannot block." The breakthrough had come from studying human history. Ancient generals had always looked for ways to turn an enemy's strengths into weaknesses. The Ravak's greatest advantage was their belief that they were invincible. That same confidence had made them predictable and careless. Colonel Wright supervised the training of the assault troops who would board Ravak vessels. "Forget everything you know about civilized warfare," she told her soldiers. "The Ravak do not take prisoners, they do not negotiate, they do not show mercy to civilians. We will fight them the same way they have fought everyone else." The training was unlike anything in human military history. Soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity, in poisonous atmospheres, and against enemies who used biological weapons. They studied recordings of Ravak tactics and learned to counter every strategy the aliens might use. But the most important part of their training was psychological. "Remember why we are doing this," Wright would tell each new group of recruits. "Every Ravak ship we destroy saves innocent lives. Every battle we win brings justice for the species they have murdered." The weapons themselves were revolutionary. Engineer Kate's team had developed plasma cannons that could punch through Ravak shields, biological weapons that targeted Ravak physiology, and stealth technology that made human ships nearly invisible to alien sensors. "We studied their mistakes," Kate explained to Admiral Blake during a weapons demonstration. "They always attack the same way, Intimidation first, then biological weapons, then systematic destruction. They expect their enemies to panic and surrender. We will give them something very different. The human war machine extended far beyond weapons and ships. Dr. Lisa's breakthrough in communication technology allowed human forces to coordinate across vast distances instantaneously. Messages that would have taken years to travel between star systems now arrived in minutes. Ambassador Harris had been working to build alliances with other surviving species. The Kelthari have agreed to provide intelligence about Ravok's supply lines, she reported to the War Council. The Venturi are offering safe harbor for our ships in their territory. Even some of the smaller species are contributing what they can. But the most valuable allies came from an unexpected source. Several Ravok prisoners, captured during recent raids on remote outposts, had begun cooperating with human intelligence officers. They were not prisoners of war in the traditional sense, but rather Ravok citizens who had grown disgusted with their government's policies. Not all of them support the genocide, explained Dr. Robert, who had been interviewing the defectors. Some joined the Dominion military believing they were protecting their people from threats. When they learned what they were really being asked to do, they wanted out. These Ravok defectors provided crucial intelligence about Dominion military capabilities, supply routes, and internal politics. They also revealed something that changed human strategy completely. The Ravok leadership was beginning to worry about the reports coming from human space. They have never encountered organized resistance before, one defector explained through a translation device. The reports of human military buildup have reached the highest levels of command. Some leaders are advocating for immediate attack before humanity becomes too strong. This intelligence forced Admiral Blake to accelerate the timeline for human operations. We cannot wait for them to come to us, he announced at an emergency meeting of the fleet commanders. If they decide to attack now with their full force, we might not be ready. We need to take the initiative. The plan that emerged was ambitious beyond anything humans had ever attempted. Instead of waiting for the Ravok to reach human space, the fleet would travel deep into Dominion territory and strike at their key installations. The goal was not conquest but disruption, destroy their weapons factories, eliminate their research facilities, and show the galaxy that the Ravok were not invincible. We will hit them where they live, General Torres explained to the assembled fleet commanders. For centuries, they have felt safe in their home territory while their fleets spread death across the galaxy. We are going to change that. The Narration target was a Ravok biological weapons facility, located in a system 300 light-years from Earth. Intelligence suggested this was where the plague that killed the Ashanti had been developed. More importantly, it was where the Ravok were, working on new diseases designed to target other species. Captain Reed would command the assault team that would capture the facility. Our mission is threefold, she explained to her Marines. Destroy the biological weapons, capture the research data, and send a message to every Ravok in the galaxy that their crimes have consequences. The human fleet began its journey in complete secrecy, using new stealth technology to avoid detection by Ravok patrols. The ships traveled through empty space between star systems, following routes that no previous expedition had ever used. As they approached Ravok territory, intercepted communications revealed growing panic among Dominion forces. Reports of human military activity had reached Ravok command centers, but they had no idea how to respond to an enemy that refused to follow the established pattern of submission and destruction. They are confused, reported Communications Officer Dan, who had been monitoring Ravok transmissions. They keep asking their commanders for instructions on how to fight an enemy that actually fights back. Some of their local commanders are requesting reinforcements that their leadership cannot spare. The psychological impact was already working. For the first time in centuries, the Ravok were experiencing something they had never felt before. Fear. They had grown so accustomed to being the predators that they had forgotten what it felt like to be prey. Admiral Blake stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the human fleet prepared for its first major engagement with Ravok forces. Around him, thousands of human ships moved through space with deadly precision, carrying weapons designed specifically to destroy those who had made genocide their way of life. "Open a channel to all ships," he commanded. His voice carried across the fleet reaching every human warrior who had volunteered for this mission. For 400 years, the Ravak have believed that might makes right, that the strong have the right to destroy the weak. They have murdered entire civilizations and called it progress. Today, we teach them the difference between strength and cruelty. The fleet moved forward into Ravak space, bringing with it the promise of justice for all the innocent lives that had been lost. Behind them, across human space, billions of people waited for news of the battle that would determine the future of the galaxy. The age of easy genocide was about to end. The Ravak research facility hung in space like a metal spider, its long arms extending into the darkness around a dying red star. For 50 years, this station had been the center of the Dominion's biological weapons program, the place where diseases were created to destroy entire species. Today, it would burn. Captain Reed watched through her ship's viewscreen as the human assault fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 17 different targets across Ravak space were about to be hit simultaneously, but this facility held special meaning for every human warrior. This was where the plague that killed the Ashanti had been born. "All ships report ready," announced her tactical officer. "Enemy defenses are minimal. They were not expecting us." Reed nodded grimly. The Ravak had grown so confident in their safety that they barely bothered to guard their most important installations. For centuries, no one had dared to attack them, in their own territory. That overconfidence was about to cost them everything. "Begin the assault," she ordered. Human ships materialized from stealth mode all around the facility, their weapons already charged and targeting the station's critical systems. The Ravak defenders had only seconds to realize what was happening before the first plasma bolts tore through their shields. The station's commanding officer, a tall Ravak with silver skin and cold black eyes, stared in disbelief at his tactical display. "How did they get past our sensors?" he demanded of his crew. "Where did these ships come from?" His communications officer looked up from her console with fear in her voice. "Sir, we are receiving similar reports from installations across the sector. Human forces are attacking everywhere at once." The Ravak commander had been involved in dozens of raids against peaceful worlds. He had watched entire populations die from diseases created in this very facility, but he had never been on the receiving end of a military attack, and the experience left him paralyzed with shock. Captain Reed's Marines boarded the station through breach pods that punched through the hull like metal fists. These soldiers had trained for months specifically for this mission, studying the layout of Ravak facilities and learning to fight in their artificial atmosphere. Sergeant Mike led the first team through the station's main laboratory, where rows of biological samples lined the walls in temperature-controlled containers. Each sample represented a different weapon designed to kill a specific species. The Ashanti plague was here, along with diseases that had destroyed the Velian artists, the Corlan philosophers, and hundreds of other civilizations. "Burn it all," Mike ordered his team. "Every sample, every computer, every piece of research, nothing leaves this place intact." The human soldiers moved through the facility with methodical efficiency, destroying decades of genocidal research. But they also gathered evidence, recording everything they found to broadcast across the galaxy. The universe needed to see what the Ravak had been doing in secret. Dr. Zarn, the station's chief researcher, tried to escape with his most important data files. He had spent his entire career developing new ways to kill innocent people, and he could not bear the thought of losing his life's work. But human soldiers cornered him in his private laboratory, surrounded by the tools he had used to commit mass murder. "Please," he begged through his translation device. "I was only following orders. I never wanted to hurt anyone." The human soldiers looked at him with cold contempt. This creature had personally designed the weapons that killed billions of innocent people across the galaxy. His laboratories contained detailed records of his experiments on living subjects, from dozens of species. "Tell that to the Ashanti," one of the soldiers replied before placing him under arrest. Across Ravak space, similar scenes were playing out at 17 different installations. Human forces struck with overwhelming speed and violence, destroying weapons factories, research centers, and military bases that the Dominion had considered untouchable. On the industrial world of Kelm 7, General Torres personally led the assault on the main weapons production facility. The planet's surface was covered with factories that produced the energy weapons used to massacre civilian populations. Massive smokestacks filled the air with toxic fumes from the manufacturing process. Target: the power generators first, Torres commanded as her ships entered the planet's atmosphere. Without power, their entire operation shuts down. The attack was devastating in its precision. Human pilots, trained on Earth's most advanced flight simulators, darted between the factory complexes like deadly insects. Their weapons found every critical target, every power source, every control center that kept the facility running. Ravak factory workers fled in panic as explosions ripped through their workplace. Many of them had never seen combat before, having spent their entire lives in the safe rear areas of Dominion territory. The sight of enemy ships attacking their homeworld filled them with a terror they had never experienced. The psychological impact spread far beyond the targets themselves. Intercepted Ravak communications showed growing panic among their military leadership as reports of human attacks flooded their command centers. "How is this possible?" demanded Overlord Vash during an emergency meeting of the Dominion High Council. "These humans are supposed to be a primitive species. Our intelligence report said they had no significant military capability." General Krell, the Dominion's top military commander, studied the tactical reports with growing alarm. "Our intelligence was wrong. These attacks show advanced planning, sophisticated technology, and coordinated strategy across multiple star systems. We are not dealing with primitives." The evidence was undeniable. Human forces had struck deep into Ravak territory, using stealth technology that surpassed Dominion capabilities. Their weapons had penetrated Ravak shields that were supposed to be impervious to attack. Most disturbing of all, they had shown tactical flexibility that adapted to changing conditions in real time. "They fight like us," admitted Admiral Tech, studying recordings of the human assault techniques. "But they fight better than us. Their coordination is perfect, their timing is flawless, and they show no hesitation in destroying our installations." Back at the biological weapons facility, Captain Reed watched as her Marines completed their mission. Every laboratory had been destroyed, every research sample incinerated, and every computer system wiped clean. The evidence of Ravak crimes had been carefully documented and transmitted to human command. But the most important part of the mission was yet to come. Reed activated the facility's main communication system and began broadcasting to every Ravak installation in the sector. "This is Captain Reed of the Human Defense Forces," she announced. "For centuries, your people have murdered innocent civilizations across this galaxy. You have used biological weapons, systematic genocide, and terror tactics against species that could not defend themselves. Today that ends." The broadcast reached Ravak military commanders throughout the region, many of whom were still trying to understand how their supposedly secure installations had been destroyed so easily. "We know about your crimes," Reed continued. "We have seen the evidence of your atrocities. We have heard the final words of your victims. The galaxy will no longer tolerate your existence." She paused, letting her words sink into every Ravak listener. "You made one crucial mistake. You assumed that every species in the universe would be as helpless as your previous victims. You assumed that no one would ever fight back with the same brutality that you have shown to others. You were wrong." The transmission ended, but its impact spread throughout Ravak space like wildfire. For the first time in their history, the Dominion faced an enemy that matched their own ruthlessness with superior skill and determination. In the hours that followed, Ravak communication networks carried increasingly desperate messages between military installations, requests for reinforcements that could not be filled, pleas for new defensive strategies against an enemy they did not understand, reports of widespread panic among civilian populations who had never imagined their homeworlds could be attacked. Admiral Blake, monitoring the communications from his flagship, smiled grimly as he listened to the intercepted messages. "They are learning what fear feels like," he told his staff. "For 400 years they have been the monsters in the darkness. Now they know how it feels to be hunted. The human fleet regrouped after the successful attacks, having achieved objectives that exceeded all expectations. Every target had been destroyed, valuable intelligence had been gathered, and the psychological impact on Ravak leadership was clearly devastating. But this was only the beginning. The attacks had been designed to send a message, to show the Ravak that their reign of terror was ending. The real war was yet to come, and humanity was ready for whatever the Dominion might throw at them in response. As the human ships prepared to return to their bases, Captain Reed took one last look at the destroyed biological weapons facility. The station that had created death for so many innocent species was now nothing but twisted metal and floating debris. "For the Ashanti," she whispered, speaking for every human warrior who had participated in the day's battles. "For all the voices that were silenced. This is just the beginning of what we owe you." Deep in the heart of Ravak space, Overlord Krex stared at the tactical display showing the positions of his remaining fleet. 3 years of warfare with the humans had reduced the once mighty Dominion to a shadow of its former power. Hundreds of worlds had fallen, thousands of ships had been destroyed, and the unstoppable war machine that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries was finally facing its end. The Ravak homeworld of Velkris hung before them, a dark planet surrounded by the twisted metal remains of orbital defense stations. This was where it would end one way or another. The surviving Dominion forces had gathered here for their final stand, while somewhere in the darkness beyond, the human fleet was preparing for the last battle of the war. "How many ships do we have left?" Krex asked his tactical officer. 800 vessels of various classes, came the reply. "Less than 10% of our original strength." Krex nodded grimly. He had commanded Ravak forces for over 2 centuries, leading the destruction of dozens of peaceful civilizations. He had watched entire species die without feeling any emotion, other than satisfaction at a job well done. But facing the humans had taught him something he had never experienced before, what it felt like to be outmatched by a superior enemy. The humans fought differently from anyone the Ravak had ever encountered. They did not simply defend their territory and hope for peace. They hunted Ravak forces across the galaxy with relentless determination, destroying every installation and eliminating every trace of the Dominion's genocidal infrastructure. Their tactics were brutal and effective. Human ships would appear from nowhere, strike with overwhelming force, then vanish before counterattacks could be organized. They showed no mercy to Ravak civilians and no respect for Dominion military tradition. They fought like the Ravak had always fought, but they did it better. "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet." Krex straightened in his command chair. "Put it through." The image that appeared on his screen was that of Admiral Blake, the human commander who had become the nightmare of every Ravak military officer. Blake looked older than he had at the beginning of the war, his hair now completely gray and his face marked by the strain of 3 years of constant battle. "Overlord Krex," Blake began, his voice carrying clearly across the vast distance between their fleets. "I am offering you one final chance to end this war without further bloodshed." Krex listened carefully as the human admiral outlined his terms: complete surrender of all Ravak military forces, submission to galactic war crimes tribunals, reparations to the surviving families of species destroyed by the Dominion, the dismantling of all weapons research facilities, and the permanent monitoring of Ravak space by an international peacekeeping force. "These terms are generous considering your crimes," Blake continued, "but they are non-negotiable. You have 1 hour to respond." The transmission ended, leaving Krex alone with his thoughts. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders, but he could see the defeat in their eyes. They had all witnessed the systematic destruction of everything they had once believed to be invincible. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly, "perhaps we should consider—" "No," Krex interrupted. "The Ravak do not surrender. We do not bow to inferior species. We fight until the end." He activated his fleet communication system and addressed every remaining Ravak commander. "Fellow warriors, the humans believe they have defeated us. They offer us slavery dressed up as mercy, expecting us to abandon everything our civilization represents. I say we show them what the Dominion truly means. His words carried across the Ravak fleet, reaching ships that had survived battles across dozens of star systems. These were the elite units that had escaped human ambushes, the veteran crews that had witnessed the destruction of their entire empire. We will fight, Krex continued. We will show these humans that some enemies cannot be conquered, cannot be intimidated, cannot be broken. We will die as we have lived, as the masters of this galaxy. The response from his fleet was immediate and unanimous. Every remaining Ravak commander pledged their ships to the final battle. They would not surrender, would not negotiate, would not compromise their beliefs even in the face of certain death. In the darkness beyond Velcris, the human fleet received Krex's response with grim satisfaction. Admiral Blake had not expected the Ravak to surrender, but he had been obligated to offer them the chance. Now there would be no questions about what happened next. All ships prepare for final assault, he commanded. Target their command vessels first. End this quickly. The human armada that approached Velcris was the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. Over 10,000 ships of every class, carrying weapons designed specifically to destroy Ravak technology. Veterans of dozens of battles commanded by officers who had studied every aspect of Dominion tactics and strategy. But more than that, they carried with them the memory of every innocent life the Ravak had taken. The Ashanti researchers who had died alone in space. The Velian artists whose music would never be heard again. The Corlan philosophers who had sought only peace and understanding. 400 species, billions of individual lives, all crying out for justice from beyond the grave. The battle began as the human fleet entered the Velcris system. Ravak ships, desperate and fighting for their very existence, threw themselves against the advancing humans with suicidal fury. Energy weapons lit up the darkness as shields collapsed, and hulls were torn apart by weapons fire. Commander Nova led the assault on Krex's flagship, her squadron of heavy cruisers targeting the massive Dominion dreadnought that had once struck terror into peaceful worlds across the galaxy. For every world you destroyed, she whispered as her ships closed in for the final attack. The battle was fierce but brief. Ravak ships, outnumbered and outgunned, fought with the desperation of cornered predators. But human tactics, honed by years of warfare against this same enemy, proved devastating in their effectiveness. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries were reduced to burning debris in minutes. Krex's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, lasted longer than the rest. Its massive shields and heavy armor had been designed to survive attacks from entire enemy fleets. But human weapons, specifically created to counter Ravak technology, found every weakness and exploited every vulnerability. As his ship died around him, Krex activated his personal communicator one final time. His message would be broadcast across human space, carried by the same communication networks that had once spread news of Ravak victories. Humans, he began, his voice distorted by the failing systems of his dying ship. You believe you have won, but you have only proven that you are no different from us. You are killers, destroyers, conquerors, who use righteous words to justify your violence. Admiral Blake, listening to the broadcast from his flagship, felt no sympathy for the dying overlord. This creature had personally ordered the deaths of billions of innocent people. His ships had reduced peaceful worlds to ash, and his laboratories had created diseases designed to cause maximum suffering. You will become like us, Krex continued, his flagship breaking apart around him. You will rule through fear, destroy those who oppose you, and call it justice. The galaxy has not gained saviors. It has simply traded one set of masters for another. The transmission ended as the Eternal Dominion exploded in a brilliant flash of light, taking with it the last symbol of Ravak military power. Around the dying ship, the remnants of the Dominion fleet continued to fight until every vessel was destroyed. When the battle ended, Admiral Blake stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, looking out at the debris field that had once been the enemy fleet. The war was over. The Ravak Dominion, after centuries of terror and genocide, had finally been defeated. But Krex's final words echoed in his mind. Would humanity become the new tyrants of the galaxy? Would the species that had fought so hard to protect the innocent eventually become the very monsters they had destroyed? "Sir," his communications officer announced, "we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. Species that have been hiding for centuries are emerging to thank us. The Kelthari are calling for a celebration. The Venturi want to build monuments to human courage." Blake nodded slowly. Perhaps Krex had been wrong. Perhaps there was a difference between those who fought to protect and those who fought to destroy. Time would tell. The human fleet began the long journey back to Earth, carrying with them news of the final victory. But they also carried a responsibility that would last for generations. They had become the guardians of galactic peace, the species that others would look to when darkness threatened to return. As the ships jumped into faster-than-light travel, leaving the ruins of the Ravok homeworld behind them, a new age began. An age where genocide would not be tolerated, where the innocent would be protected, and where the memory of species like the Ashanti would be preserved forever. In the memorial garden on Earth where a monument to the Ashanti researchers had been built, children played among flowers that had been grown from seeds found on the derelict research ship. The garden was peaceful and beautiful, a place where life flourished instead of being destroyed. President Chen, now an elderly woman who had guided humanity through its greatest war, stood among the flowers and spoke the words that had become humanity's promise to the galaxy. "Never again," she said, her voice carrying across the garden and beyond, to the stars where human ships now patrolled. "Never again will innocence go undefended. Never again will peaceful voices be silenced by those who mistake cruelty for strength." The war was over, but the vigil had just begun.